What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so this is what we have right here. This is our tier list. I put a poll out on Instagram seeing if you guys wanted me to do the tier list. So here we go. This is 15 of the biggest weather events the Pat's Path Predictor channel has covered. So we're going to go ahead and go over all of them in chronological order. The first one we're going to talk about is the Washington, D.C. snowstorm that happened on January 3rd, 2022. That one was infamous because there were quite a few people stranded. About 200 people were actually stranded in Virginia, including Senator Tim Kaine. And that's where we're at right there. And how this tier list will work is basically A, B, C, D, and F like we're in school. So that's how we're going to grade these. So for this first one, I'm going to put in B tier, mostly because, well, if it was just a regular snowstorm, I put it in C tier and everything like that. But B tier, I'm putting that in there because of the added effect of those people getting stranded for quite a long while, and that became pretty infamous right there with that. The second one we're going to talk about is the Boston blizzard that occurred around the 30th of January of this year, 2022. And it's hard to tell which one to put in because I'm leaning towards B tier, but A tier also is not out of the table because of just how much snow and just how powerful it was. So I'm going to end up just putting it in A tier because of how powerful a storm this was. Like Boston got like somewhere around 30 inches of snow, some of the suburbs of Boston did, which is pretty ridiculous by itself, but it also had quite a lot of wind with that as well. So definitely something interesting to take a look at. The next one we're looking at is the Midwest snowstorm we covered on February 1st, February 2nd, February 3rd, 2022 on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. I'm putting that in C tier, mostly because, yes, it was a pretty large storm and everything like that, but there really wasn't that much notable that came with it, to be quite frank. Yeah, a lot of places got a lot of snow, but that's pretty much what we saw with that whole thing. It was kind of your generic cross-country snowstorm right there. Same thing with the March 12th nor'easter, excuse me. But I'm putting that in C tier as well, mostly because it was just a big nor'easter. Yeah, there was a lot of wind and there was quite a bit of severe weather with that, but it's not notable enough for me to really put it in B tier. And the next one we're going to talk about is a tornado outbreak, a severe weather outbreak, rather, that occurred on April 7th, 2022. I'm inclined to put that in D tier, mostly because it was kind of didn't materialize as much as it would have. It was under an enhanced risk, which basically means that we're looking at severe weather and everything like that. However, I couldn't really find anything notable. This was basically your generic outbreak right there, and it kind of underperformed a little bit with that, so I'm putting that in D tier right there. The next one was actually a week later. I believe it was around April 15th, April 16th. I'm not entirely sure the date. I'll have to look at that. But yeah, this was actually a pretty notable outbreak, actually. We had some moderate risks going from southern Indiana all the way down to Louisiana from the SPC. We had quite a few tornado reports from that, which is pretty interesting right there. I'm putting that in C tier. I would put it higher, however, this wasn't that much of a notable outbreak. The next one, though, was rather notable. It was Andover, Kansas, right there. The Andover, Kansas, which was the EF3 that Reed Timmer got that insane footage from, which is pretty interesting to take a look at, if you ask me. I'm going to go ahead and put that in B tier, not only because of the destruction it caused in the rating and everything, but we got that footage, and it'll help us understand how tornadoes work as time continues to go on. The next thing we're going to talk about is the derecho of May 12th that hit much of the Great Plains, as well as Iowa and Minnesota, those areas right there. That area right there, it was a notable derecho. We saw winds around 90 miles per hour. And everything like that, but it did mostly affect rural communities and everything like that. It's still pretty powerful. I'm putting that in C tier and not anything higher because of basically where it hit, and not D tier because of how powerful it was. So we're going to split the difference with that, and that's why I'm putting it in C tier. Now we're going to move on to tropical weather for the next 5. The first one we have is Hurricane Agatha. Hurricane Agatha, for those of you who do not know, made landfall in Mexico as a Category 2 hurricane on the Pacific side. And we covered it here on Pat's Path Predictor when that was happening. And this was a pretty notable system that moved through. It was a powerful system, caused quite a bit of flooding with that, did kill quite a few people. I'm gonna put that in B tier, actually. The reason I'm putting that in B tier is because of how basically how notable it was. The remnants of it also crossed into the Atlantic Ocean and formed Tropical Storm Alex as well, which ended up hitting Bermuda and Florida quite hard with some flooding. So definitely something to take a look at. The next one we're going to talk about is Hurricane Bonnie. Bonnie actually started in the Atlantic Ocean and then crossed into the Pacific Ocean, which is something you really do not see all the time, and definitely something to keep an eye on. However, Bonnie, it started off as a tropical storm. It was slow to develop. It did hit Trinidad and Tobago. It did hit the ABC Islands, but it was only a potential tropical cyclone. It then made landfall in Nicaragua as a tropical storm. It then intensified to a major Category 3 hurricane. However, it did not impact any land on that. So I'm inclined to put this in D tier, not mostly because, well, it didn't really impact any land. And yes, it did get up to major hurricane status. However, it did not affect any land. It was kind of a case study at that point. So was this one, Hurricane Darby. However, I'm putting this in C tier, a little bit higher than Bonnie, because this was our first Category 4 hurricane of 2022, and of either the Pacific or the Atlantic hurricane season. This was in the Pacific, and it was approaching Hawaii. However, it didn't really impact Hawaii except with some rain showers. The water's just too cold over there to really produce any meaningful tropical development over there, and the hurricanes that do move through weaken as time continues to go on. Still, Darby did rapidly intensify, did have a very impressive structure. However, there really wasn't anything other of note, so that's why I'm keeping it in C tier. The next one, though, is Hurricane Fiona, actually, and I'm putting this in B tier because, for those of you who do not know, Hurricane Fiona impacted considerably a lot in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. It caused quite a lot of damage. Some people say it was worse than Hurricane Maria of 2017 and everything like that. That is debatable, and I'm leaving that up to you guys. However, it's still a very notable system nevertheless. It made landfall in Puerto Rico as a Category 1 hurricane. However, it still caused quite a lot of damage. There were people saying, oh, it's just a Category 1. A Category 1's not going to do anything. Category 1 hurricanes are still pretty notable for causing quite a bit of damage, especially the slow-moving ones because of all the flooding that happens with them. So definitely something of note, and definitely caused quite a lot of damage in Puerto Rico, killed quite a few people as well. The next one we're talking about is actually Hurricane Ian, and Hurricane Ian was what I would like to call the magnum opus of the 2022 hurricane season. Hurricane Ian first developed in the Caribbean Sea, and then intensified into a major hurricane, made landfall in Cuba as a Category 3 with winds of 125 miles per hour, moved into the Gulf of Mexico, underwent an eyewall replacement cycle without me even knowing this because the satellite didn't even show the obvious signs of that. That's why it was so hard to detect for me, as well as one of my friends, Ethan WX, to be quite frank. And then it just exploded into this high-end Category 4, debatably low-end Category 5 hurricane that happened right there. And then, as the dry air started to kind of cut off its circulation and the flow of it, it started to weaken as it approached land. Still a very devastating storm. Made landfall as a high-end Category 4 hurricane with winds of 150 miles per hour. So definitely a very notable storm. It's going to take Southwest Florida a long time to recover from this. I'm putting this in A tier for obvious reasons. Right there. So the next one we're going to talk about is kind of this tornado outbreak that happened on the November 30th. Well, first of all, the reason I have this up here is because we don't see stuff like this in November. November is what people call the most boring month in weather. So to have this on here is actually quite notable in my opinion. That's why I have it there. There was some noticeable destruction and everything like that I have noticed, and there was quite a bit of damage that was associated with that. However, it's not nearly as notable as Ian or anything like that. I'm putting this in C tier. I'm not putting it in D tier or anything like that because it was still a rather destructive outbreak. There was still a moderate risk with this, and I was keeping an eye on it. Still a pretty bad system. And the next one we're going to take a look at is actually the snowstorm that happened last week that really hit Buffalo, really just hit Minnesota all the way through Buffalo. Killed so far, from what I understand, 30 people in Buffalo. Well, not in Buffalo, but across the country so far. and that total is expected to continue to go up. What it ended up doing was on Lake Erie was it basically had a bunch of waves, and then it got so cold that it actually froze the water, and that's why a lot of restaurants, a lot of buildings had a bunch of ice on it and everything like that. That's why they were covered in ice, and that was extremely noticeable. Now, I'm having a hard time deciding whether this should be in B tier or A tier, considering what's going on. This is still technically an ongoing situation. However, I have to make a decision at some point, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in A tier, considering how destructive this was, especially in Buffalo. There are some areas that saw over 4 feet of snow, and considering all the waves that happened, a lot of basically metro areas across the United States got impacted by this. Travel got impacted by this, so that's leaning me towards A tier, and that's why I'm putting it on there. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tier list. This is 15 of the biggest events that we covered here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, so we wanted to show that to you right there. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps me out and helps me make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. So with that being said, have a wonderful day. Stay safe.